My name is Jack Wigan. I guess I'm serving as the chair of this committee. First of all, welcome you all to the kickoff meeting or initial meeting of the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. Our charge is to update the 2000 Westwood Comprehensive Plan, which amazingly some of you were involved with. So that's a good thing, and I appreciate you coming back. So first of all, I want to be grateful for your willingness to do this, to serve on the committee. This is important work. Abby has laid out a schedule where it won't consume a lot of years of our lives, so that's a good thing as well. Before we get started, David Atkins, the chair of the planning board, wanted to lend his thanks as well.
So I just wanted to thank everyone, because I know that it's a big time commitment. Hopefully it will be managed to not be a terrible amount of time, but this is really important work, and I think it's a great opportunity to engage the community in planning for the future of Westwood. So I want to thank everyone for stepping up to this, and just let you know, we'll be hoping to see a lot of engagement with people all over town. I'm eager to see inclusion of people from young people, older people, all different parts of the community, to really put together something that reflects what the residents want for the future. So thank you again, and good luck.
Thank you, Dave. We'll be working really closely with the planning board members, so you'll see a lot of us, I'm sure, as time goes along. As you all know, on November 5th, the Board of Selectmen appointed 18 members to the steering committee. That's all you people. We're only missing one person, I think. I introduced myself. Steve Olenoff, who I served on the planning board with for a number of years, is the vice chair, and I think most of you know Abby McCabe, the town planner, as well. I think at this point we should start off the meeting with going around the table and letting people introduce themselves. And I'd suggest that we, at this point, keep it to your name, and then I think really any relevant experience or expertise you bring to the committee, any history with the town in terms of serving on a board, because I think what we've been selected for is that expertise and our institutional knowledge of the community. Sound good? So Steve, would you start?
I'm Steve Olenoff, and I've been on the planning board of 27 years, plus a few other little appointments here and there.
It's a good start. My name is Trevor Lobenstein. I was until recently on the planning board with Steve, actually, and also David. I'm an architect by training, and that is my day job, so to speak. And at times it feels like my night job was the planning board, so hence why I decided to step down. But yeah, so there you have it.
Charlie?
My name is Charlie Donahue. I've recently had the opportunity to serve on the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee that recently voted a lot of recommendations. I'm on the school committee, and I spent 30 years in a field called health planning.
Hi, I'm Kate Wynn. I am newly on the Pedestrian and Bike Safety Committee and newly on the Fair Housing Committee, and very interested in participating with this group.
And I'm John Rogers. I chair the Conservation Commission last bunch of years. I've chaired commissions in the past. I'm a professional engineer, worked a lot on site design and all kinds of other things in regards to infrastructure. But I threw in my hat for anything. So I'm working on town centers with Kate, which is going to be great.
It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be a great section.
I'm Sheila Henley-Longbout. I was very active in the schools here, just with my children were going through the schools. I was involved in being presidents of PTOs and bringing after-school programming to the Sheehan School. And then I did run for school committee unsuccessfully, but I used to tape the school committee members' meetings for the longest time. I would go get the cable equipment and set it up and bring it back, and not having cable, I could never see how badly of the job I did. But I kept at it for a while. I thought it was important for everyone to know what was going on. And I was also on this committee in 2000, was it right?
That's I remember you
Seriously?
from that. And Barbara as well?
Yeah, yes.
Just a couple of years ago.
Who was that?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Barbara Shea. I grew up here in town, and I have served on several committees over the years, not very recently, but I'm a real estate agent in town. and I see people who want to move to our community and people who are moving from our community, and I feel like I might be able to help with the housing aspect of this.
Phil Iramo, never been on a board, never served in any type of capacity like this, but I am a local business owner, primarily additions remodeling business, so I encounter a lot of, especially young people, somebody mentioned, late 20s, early 30s, that we have a lot of dialogue about the town and how it's being developed, and I'm really interested. I've always been interested in this stuff. I grew up in the development business, and I'm pretty passionate about the municipal planning part of it. I like that. I'd like to get more involved with that. So.
Yeah.
Tom Vitti, I was the library director in town for 34 years. Was also head of the school libraries for a number of years. Served on the school site committee, site council, and have been on the board of my church for a number of years as well.
Peter Kane, I was chairman of WEAC for 3 years, on the FinCom for a number of years. I was a mechanical engineer for 37 years. I spent about half of it in the solar business. I went back to school for a teaching degree. I'm now teaching environmental science over at Norfolk Aggie. My passion and expertise is climate change, sustainability, and renewable energy.
And resiliency.
We'll see.
I'm Pam Kane, and you might have noticed I'm his wife, by the way I corrected him, so. I currently serve on the Westwood Environmental Action Committee. I have served on the Fair Housing Board. I am an active member in the League of Women Voters and active on my board at church and just in general active in town politics as an observer, not as a participant.
Phil Shapiro, I'm one of the town assessors, was a selectman for 6 years, and on the business, I was chairman of the Business Development Advisory Board, which is maybe why business development thing is a good thing. And also I was on the FinCom and the Charter Study Commission. And in my professional life, I have been a CFO of the Boston Harbor Cleanup and Babson and Trinity Colleges. And now I'm the chairman of the board of ISO New England, which runs the electric system. I'm the bad guy. So they put Peter. They put it.
He can reach it from there, Phil.
2-on-1.
And Peter?
Peter Neville. I was on FinCom for 6 years and did a little bit of work on the OPEB task force. My business is, ran a food manufacturing company down in Brockton and spent a fair amount of time on different boards related to economic development in Brockton, the chamber and a variety of economic things, and then did competitiveness council with the governor back 10 years ago.
Nancy?
I'm Nancy Donahue. I'm currently chair of the Historical Commission. I was previously president of the Historical Society. I currently serve on the Westwood Scholarship Committee. I am a past president of the League of Women Voters. And I guess that's it. Professionally, I've worked all my life as a technical writer. I currently work for Walter Schooler.
You can help us out.
I was just going to say, have we got a job for you?
I've been taking notes all my life.
Janica?
I am Jan Mediri. I'm currently on the Board of Youth and Family Services, where I'm vice chair. Prior to that, I had done a little bit of time working on the zoning board. Involved with elementary schools. I was a PTO president for 4 years over at Downey. And now that my daughter's in middle school, I'm taking a break from that. In my professional life, I work at the Department of Children and Families as a manager. I'm involved in a lot of boards and steering committees with them as well.
Linda?
My name's Linda Walsh, and I haven't been on too many committees in town because I was busy raising 3 children working full-time. So now I felt it's a good time for me to kind of step up and help out in any way I can. My day job is a transportation planner at Mass DOT. So I have some experience with the areas of like land use and things like that in my everyday job profession. So I think I can be very useful on that committee.
Excellent. Why not transportation?
It would be a conflict.
Good answer. All right, very good. All right, so the only person we're missing is Paula Jacobson from the committee, but why don't I see Nora back there? Introduce yourself. I think everybody probably knows you.
Nora Loughnane, I'm the Director of Community and Economic Development, and I'm a Westwood resident for over 25 years.
Great. Thank
And
you,
I
Nora.
worked on the 2000 comprehensive plan.
You did not.
I did. I was the Conservation Commission representative.
Oh, that's right, that's right. All right. Oh, sorry.
I'm Dave, I'm a town planner. I talked to most of you when your applications came in, but I'll be your primary staff throughout this process. And I also, I staff the planning board. So the planning board is a 5-member elected board. They ultimately will have to approve the plan that you bring forward. That's part of the law. You'll be working on preparing this plan over the next year, and then you'll bring it forward for the planning board for adoption. So I'll be working with you and working with the planning board throughout the process.
And she'll be doing most of the talking tonight as well. But I'll tee it up any rate, and then we'll turn it over to Abby to go through some of the material and the work plan and timeline and that kind of thing. But I thought the first thing we should probably describe is what a comprehensive plan or a master plan is. You've all got a copy, I believe, of the 2000 plan, and that's a very good example of what the plan can be. And I'll read from a couple of different places. A master plan for a community is actually established by Mass General Law, Chapter 81, Section 41D. And it's, as Abby mentioned, a plan that's the responsibility of the planning board, but planning boards often turn that responsibility over to another committee because the plans are so cross a lot of topical areas. So, and they are meant to influence what goes on throughout the community. In accordance, according to Section 41D, a master plan is designed to provide a basis for decision-making regarding the long-term physical development of a municipality. A couple of other explanations or descriptions of what a master plan is. It's a set of policies and implementation strategies to guide future physical development, respond to community and societal needs, promote economic development, environmental protection, and identify necessary public investments in infrastructure. And the important part of it is all of these elements in a community are interrelated. And so the comprehensive plan that we're working on will takes that into account. In other words, we'll all be working in a topical area, but it's important that each one of those elements of the plan is interrelated and is consistent. So there'll be some attention paid to that as well. The purposes guide public and private development, promote orderly growth, minimize costs, minimize conflicts, coordinate public and private decisions and investments. Occasionally the state offers money to communities, grant money, and having an up-to-date comprehensive plan is often one of the criteria that they use in awarding those funds. So there is a tangible, practical reason for doing it, as well as any of the reasons that we may have. Abby, do you want to pick it up from there and go through the agenda?
Sure. So first item we have on the agenda, or second item, is to review this committee's role and purpose. And as Jack described, the plan has several different elements. There are 8 different subject areas that are required by law. I have in your packet just the summary from Mass General Laws of the sections that what a master plan has to include. And there's 8 subject areas, and then the 9th is the implementation plan. So this year, or our 2000 plan includes all of those sections, and this time we have added to it, expanded it to add a resiliency and sustainability section. That's what Peter, Pam, and Phil are working on. So we really have you grouped into teams of two, two and then three on the resiliency section. So each of you are really responsible. When we reviewed this with the planning board and the board of selectmen, the recommendation was to assign each of you to these committees, so you'll really be in charge of and manage your section. The current plan that we have is from 2000. We did try and update, I think, in 2010 and 2012, but we never got it fully off the ground. We started it, but we didn't get it all the way through to fruition. So that's why we thought a different approach this time was to assign people to really take the lead on a section. So you'll ultimately be responsible for producing your section. And last time we got a little overwhelmed with writing. So that's why we were really looking for people to help write the sections of the plan. So that's what we'll be looking for each of you to do, is helping with gathering the information and writing the first draft that will ultimately go to the planning board. So that's essentially where we are with the role of this committee. The planning board over the summer had kind of talked about how we're going to do this. So the first step was to appoint this. They had first thrown out a 9 to 18 member steering committee to have at least 1 to 2 people on each section area, with the goal of bringing a plan to town meeting by the end of 2019. Now, town meeting usually always meet in the spring, and then sometimes in the fall, which is in November. So that would ultimately be the goal, would be to, so this is the first kickoff meeting, and then you'd be doing the bulk of the work in the winter. So this winter into the spring and summer, and then ultimately when you're ready, that you would vote to send that to the planning board, and the planning board would have to approve it, and then after that it would be forwarded to town meeting for endorsement. So we've kind of worked out a work plan to help guide you throughout the year. We were also looking at a 1-year plan, because in the past, usually if you get over a year or over a year and a half, it kind of drags on, people lose motivation. So that's why we're trying to keep it to a 1 year. So there'll be some work, but it'll be mostly the first half of this year, and then it will be bringing it to fruition at town meeting.
Mm-hmm. Anybody have any questions about that, or any concerns? All right. Yeah, I think yes, Barbara.
I just read through it quickly, but it looked like we weren't planning to get any particular professional help with this.
Oh yes, I forgot to mention, we were trying to get a consultant to help run the vision session. So we would expect, usually in this type of process, there would be a large community visioning workshop.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd like to have one of those in the winter. We're probably aiming for either end of January, early February at this point. So we're kind of my next thing to do is to try to find a consultant to help run that. So we'd have a professional who would run that meeting, but otherwise we're not having a consultant hired to do the writing. Some communities will hire a consultant to do the writing portion, but that's why we're looking for you to do that.
It just seems like a professional in the business of broad visioning for a community would be, our committee would be well served by their expertise. That's all.
Yeah, no, that's a good observation. It's probably the most important part of it. Abby will go through the public participation plan for this entire process, which is pretty robust. There's a lot of different elements to it, but clearly one of the key pieces is that visioning workshop that we would hold. And you may recall the one from 2000, or probably the year prior to that.
And then the ones for University Ave
Yeah,
and all
yeah.
that.
So it's big
Yes,
meetings,
we're
100
run by
or more
professionals.
people,
Yes.
run by professionals, goes for a good number of hours during probably a weekend day. And that's augmented by an online survey and some other meetings where people come together and interviews that you'll be doing with department heads and so forth. And that's where the material really comes from. You know, most of the directional material that you'll be working with is actually coming from that public process. And then Abby is staffing us, and she can bring to the whole process the expertise of a professional planner. So if you feel like you may be stumbling on a section, I mean, there'll be people to back you up on it and do it. And I think this is an update to the 2000 plan. That was 18 years ago. But if you go through it, a lot of that plan was in fact implemented. Some of it hasn't been gotten to for one reason or another. But you can see that it's a pretty straightforward plan in terms of policy statements, strategies for dealing with those that topic area, and then some implementation measures. So there's not a lot of extra verbiage in the plan. It's all very straightforward, and I think it's our intent going into this that it would resemble that kind of document.
Right, and we did, so we hired a consultant for the 2000 plan we have, but that was also a totally new plan. This one is an update. We're updating it to today's standards and looking ahead 10 years. But it is an update. We have a good base to go off of. In 2000, we were working from a clean slate, so we were starting from scratch. We're going this approach without having a consultant do the whole rewrite, because we have myself, and we have more staff than we had in 2000. So what I do have here in your packet for each section is myself, I'd be working closely with you, as well as other staff. So staff is looking to do, we'll be updating the data part. So I don't have it for you yet, but soon I'll be working on getting you an updated, like, red line version of the section with at least some of the data, demographics, information like that. So we'll be doing that background work for you.
But we're visioning for the future, right? We're looking to, this is what we want Westwood to look like 10 years or 20 years, or how far into the future are we planning?
Usually about 10 to 15 years. So this 2019 update should be updated for where Westwood is today, and then look ahead 10 to 15 years. Ideally, we'd be updating the plan every 10 years, and maybe every 7 years start that, but 10 years is pretty common. After 10 years, it gets to be sometimes a little outdated, so we'd want to at least capture 10 years.
I think towns used to typically do 10 or 20-year periods, but things move much more quickly these days than they used to, and I think towns have found that they really need to be doing this more frequently than that. And then perhaps, as we're doing, is not to make it such an onerous effort that it never gets done. The key is to get this information, put it into a place, and actually use it, and that's what we're hoping to do here.
Yeah, I think if you read through the original one, it was very well written, right to the point, and since this is an update, I don't think you have to look at things, okay, these were goals. How did we achieve this goal? How far did we get to the goal? How much further do we have to go? These are the things you'll be thinking about, and you just see in here, okay, what have we achieved? What haven't we achieved? Where do we want to go? Is there anything new that we want to do or try to do? But pretty much it's adjusting what we already have, so I don't think it's that difficult. And if you look at the original one, you have a nice model to go by.
And of course, go ahead, Trevor.
So I know there are a lot of people in the room who were involved in the first plan, it sounds, or in that plan. So is the thinking that structurally the document is still living, and we're really editing and augmenting rather than, okay, let's start from scratch, let's reformat, We're not doing that. We're doing update and
yeah, it's a very straightforward plan in terms of its formatting and so forth, and we did talk about this, and I think that given the resources we have to do this, I think that's probably wise to do it that way. Following up on what Steve was talking about, if there were, for instance, these plans basically respond to issues that are current in the community at the time it's being done. So you could well be reviewing a section and say, well, there's really not any policy or strategies to take on this issue, which is now burning in the community, and that's where some new attention will need to be made. So part of it's updating what's there, but part of it, and will be informed by the visioning work and the survey and so forth, is what is on people's minds these days is that the town should be dealing with.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's
I'm
okay.
going to
That's what we're
monopolize.
here for,
But
Barbara.
like the tax rate, for instance, everybody complains about the tax rate. And is there a particular group of people looking at some way we can plan for the future? I know University Station is supposed to be alleviating in some way, but that is one big complaint of current residents and people looking to come into our town. Think, wow.
Oh,
I mean, our taxes are much higher than Wellesley and Needham, for instance.
There is the Board of Assessors, so we happen to have a
We
representative
need
there.
money to run no, we need, so
The-
still, I know, we need money to run the town, but I understand that part. But is there something in a comprehensive plan that we could vision that could alleviate going forward? How did Needham get their tax rate 30% lower than ours?
I mean, one of
it's a big
the,
community.
one of the big differences among communities, and I know this from, I've worked at Standard & Poor's doing bond ratings of cities and towns for about 12 years. And so if you look at the tax base, commercial and industrial tax base in Needham, relative to the size of the town, there's just more value there. And therefore, and I believe Needham has a split tax rate as we do. Norwood does not, but, you know, I mean, every town is different. But that industrial development and commercial development in the town allow them to have, with a split tax rate, allow them to have lower individual, you know, lower
Residential.
rates than we would. If University Station was 3 times as big as it is, as it once was.
It was going to be, it didn't happen.
Then the shift, you know, then with a one,
Substantial.
right now we're at 170 and we're making a recommendation, I don't know, a week from Monday or a week from tonight, whatever, to the selectmen on the shift for this coming year, which would be about the same, maybe a couple of basis points lower. Our rates would be low. So woulda, coulda, shoulda, you know, we could, so everybody who looks at this plan, to their section of this plan, has an impact on the tax rate. I mean, if you're talking, I mean, what are you gonna borrow money to do in public facilities? You know, how are you going to encourage different types of development versus being more restrictive and discouraging them? All feeds into what the tax rate ends up being. If you say, well, you know, we're not doing any more commercial development in Islington, you know, which somebody was saying in May, then, okay, then the tax rate goes up. If you say we want to have a lot of development in Islington, then the tax rate goes down. It's pretty.
I understand that part's straightforward, Phil, but I'm just thinking, like, somebody, a professional, and maybe that's what you could advise us on, Abby, I don't know, or if there's somebody else who could say, if 10 years, if you plan for this roadway change, or this, you know, encouragement of commercial development more intensified in the University Station area, you can look to your tax rate. Like, I don't feel qualified to look into the future and
I mean, I
come back
think
to now with a
working
plan
with
to get there.
You know, we could certainly do, if we had $50 million more in commercial value, if we had 100 more, if we had 150 more, what would the residential tax rate be?
And where could we put it,
So,
right? Where in town could the
yeah.
commercial, right?
Yeah. I mean,
So that's part of what
surely
we're
that
talking
that
about.
kind of question is, you know, that the amount of commercial development that occurs in a town is perfectly within the realm of a comprehensive plan. Probably getting into the nitty-gritty of how exactly that affects a tax rate might be beyond the capability of of the group, but there's the assessors, the FinCom, and the Board of Selectmen who think about those, and they're
Do that.
the professionals who think about that all the time. But fundamentally, what you're talking about, yes, is part of it. And that's one of the reasons why towns do increase the amount of commercial development that they're doing. versus-
And I think, actually, your point is, it's more important today than it would have been a year ago because of the changes in federal tax law. So that, we hear, we got more, well, actually, we didn't get more, but maybe we got more nasty phone calls, but we didn't get that many more abatements than we usually do. But, 40% of your abatement used to be free. 40%, people used to be able to deduct their property taxes.
Right. That's a big
Now they
reason
can
why.
deduct a piece of it, or depending upon how much income taxes they pay, and so on and so forth. Maybe they can't deduct any of it, I don't know.
Right.
But it's just, it's a little, comes a little closer to home when it's not tax deductible. So.
I remember, Barbara, in the 2012 survey, when we attempted to do the update a few years ago, there was a survey done, and that was one of the questions had to do with how
Yes.
people felt about that. So, so that we could tease that out with the community to see what they're thinking in those terms. Abby? So there's a number of handouts that Abby has prepared that really will guide us through a lot of what we want to talk about.
So in your folder, there's, on the left is your resource contact sheet. So myself and Karen Schland are the planning staff, so we're your primary contacts throughout this process. And then we have the planning board members. There are 5 planning board members. They will also act as liaisons to this process, so they've assigned themselves to specific sections. So I have their email contacts on here, so they'll be available to help you as you move forward with this, to help questions, help point you in the right direction. They'll can help come to meetings or outreach throughout the process. Right, so in each section I put your team section contact info, and I tried to list out, I think, of what other, the staff, and then what other boards and committees will be relevant for you to speak with. Then I also have in here is the initial kind of committee member description that the planning board and I had worked on over the summer, trying to look at your work plan for the year, an overall written summary, section of Mass General laws of what the plan must entail. I did have some general FAQs on what a master plan is in the process, so this is helpful. I'd recommend everyone look through that as well. And then it's a draft work plan that the planning board have worked on over the summer. So where we are right now, this is November, we have the first kickoff meeting. And then the thought would be, as you move into the holidays, I'd recommend everyone review the 2000 plan, review your section carefully, and then I, myself, and staff will work on getting you an updated section with the updated data for updated to today. And then I think we'll get to it a little bit later in the meeting. We'd also like to have a survey. I think the community-wide survey, we'd probably like to get that out soon. I'd recommend if we could start thinking about questions tonight or in the next week, and then we could have that open over the next 2 months. So that would be kind of the first thing we put out, the surveys, to have that open for 2 months over the holidays, so people have plenty of time to do that. Then the thought is we'd have the vision session in the winter time, probably end of January, early February, depending on when exactly when we can get that consultant to help us run that meeting, but it would be good to have, in that time, you'd be reviewing the data, analyzing that, and then we'd be getting in the information from the survey before the vision session. So we think that'll happen in December and January. And then next I would recommend probably in early winter, start, when you have some of the information gathered, you'll be able to start formulating some of your goals and action items in your section. So that's when I'd recommend you'd have your kind of what I'm calling stakeholder interviews. So where you would maybe meet with staff, meet with the board, such as the Board of Assessors, the Housing Partnership, the Recreation Commission, those kinds of committees to get their feedback, the input of what they think they need, and then so that they can give you feedback on where you are and what they'd like to see included in the plan. So I think that would be in the winter, February and March.
May I interject too? Abby was telling me that she's made contact with all the departments and boards and committees and so forth, so they're aware this is going on and that they're aware that they'll be contacted for it. And as I recall in the 2000 plan, the departments and the boards and committees were really key to it. You know, they obviously know what, you know, facilities and so forth, knows what's coming up, knows what's needed. So a lot of the information that you'll be able to use will come from them as well. So it's an important piece of it, and Abby can help make the contact when you're ready to do that, if you'd like.
And then, let's see, I was thinking, you know, with the planning board, when we worked out this timeline, and then I met with Jack and Steve last week, and we're thinking March might be a time you'd want to possibly regroup before you start going to planning board meetings. Then the thought is, after you've gathered some of your data, you've had this input from the survey, the vision session, your interviews, you'll have a good draft started at that point. So you might want to have, I think Jack or Steve have recommended sort of a committee meeting. You might want to have an open house of, you know, invite residents in to come talk to you in an informal setting, present your initial findings, get any last feedback. And then I'd work with each of you on scheduling you to come to planning board meetings. The planning board.
I'm sorry to interrupt. In our separate little group? Okay. Not the whole crew of us? We're going to disperse and
we're thinking
divide and conquer?
for when you come to planning board meetings, we think that would probably be sections at a time. Okay. The planning board meets generally twice a month on Tuesday evenings. So I'd have to work with you to find, make sure the timing works out, where you are, make sure your section is ready, and then we'd want to look at the planning board agenda. I'm thinking, you know, the planning board, if they're really busy, they might have to have separate meetings that focus just on the comprehensive plan, or some meetings they might not have much on their agenda, so then we could focus on two or three sections at a meeting on Tuesday evening. But essentially, the idea was, because the planning board, they have a regular meeting schedule, we have staff, they are myself, and we have the capacity for having the Westwood media film all the meetings. So we have staff available, we have, you know, posting of the agendas, the minutes, all the meetings are video recorded. So essentially, the steering committee would be a public input session for everyone to react to, for the planning board to give feedback, but it would also be posted and notified for all residents to come in public meetings. So we'd have to, I'd work carefully with each section of the committee. We'd want to have the meetings, you know, be mindful of the timing. So we'd have to kind of look at what else is on the agenda. So, and if they're really busy, they might have to schedule separate meetings that focus just on that. So that's something we'd look
March,
into.
they have a few things on their agenda generally, right?
So yep, and it might be the end of March, because I think February and early March is when the town is preparing for a town meeting. But then usually by the end of March and April, town meeting work, the bulk of it is out of the planning board's hands until that time, so it might be April, May, June timeframe. That's when town meeting's in May, and then usually I think FinCom meets in March, so it might be in that in-between time.
Sorry, Abby, I thought I heard you use the phrase open houses, and I just wasn't sure, is that what we're talking about, the getting together with the planning board, or is each group gonna have a small open house for their area of study?
You could if you wanted to. I think that's something this committee might want to.
But part of, we were talking about this, and part of this, we'd be happy to hear your thoughts on it. The open house would be where the material would be made available to people who wanted to take the time and come in and talk about it. And we thought that the committees could do that by themselves, but the chances of you getting any kind of critical mass is small. So we were thinking perhaps it could be a large event where each of the elements have the material to present, and people come in regardless of the topic that they're interested in, and go to one or more of those and do it that way. It might be more efficient, and we might attract more people. You know, all of this is based on trying to get people to participate in the process. It offers many different types of ways in as we can think of.
Is this separate from the visioning center, a session? Sorry.
Yes, when we're thinking an open house, we were thinking it as a way, maybe, expand over a few hours where people can kind of come in informally and talk to you, to hear what's going on, rather than at a public meeting where they might feel a little bit more intimidated or not want to sit through a meeting, but it'd be more informal conversation for them to give input. So it was kind of a thought, another way for you to get that.
And a little later in the process, so they can come to the visiting workshop, and that'll be all kinds of ideas will be floated at that point, and everybody will be writing it all down and stuff. But then by the time those open houses come, there is some material that has been worked up, and also draft proposals, and that's a different stage. People might have a different reaction to that. I saw Peter's hand.
Two questions. One, are we subject to open meetings?
Yes, so I was going to touch on that a little bit too. So so you are meeting as a full committee. There's 18 on the committee. 10 members make a quorum, but all your meetings of the full committee need to be posted at least 48 hours in advance. So we did do that a week ago. And then if you're going to, while you're working, if you're going to be meeting with another board or commission, such as the Recreation Commission or the Board of Assessors or Westwood Environmental Action Council, you should contact myself or their staff to get on their agenda, and probably at least a week in advance to give them time to make sure you're on the agenda. That way it'll be posted with the town clerk. It goes to the town's electronic email notification system, so that way anyone else who's interested can know that it'll be discussed on the agenda, so they can come. So that is important. So if you are going to be going to one of these other official town committees, you should contact the staff person, and I tried in here to include who that is, or you can always let me know and we'll get that posted. But while you're working on your individual sections, the 2 or 3 of you, that's okay. Though you could work on your own without it being a meeting, because it's not. It's a more of a informal committee, but you're not the part of you're not a quorum of the full body. That you're not deliberating on the overall committee's work.
One more question. For our contact list, we have Health Director Linda Shea. Has she done any work already on resilience or sustainability? I'm just curious why she's on our list of contacts.
I was just trying to think of anything, especially, actually Linda Shea, she is also retiring at the end of December, so I thought we should try to
I'll reach out to her. I know her.
But I was just kind of throwing out who we, if you have other ideas, we can update that and get more.
So if, for instance, I was going to ask the same question as Peter about how we're bound by open meeting. So for instance, there's clearly a lot of overlap between these different sections. I would think, the transportation group would want to talk to the sustainability group, because those things are married very tightly. So as long as we're meeting in a group smaller than 10, we're basically free to get together at Starbucks and just say, hey, these are the 20 things we're thinking about, what do you think, or whatever it is, kind of thing. Is that fair to say, or is that risky?
Yes. Yes, I think
Yeah.
you can under 10, but if you are having maybe a group meeting of maybe more than 5 of you, we could also post
You
it,
could
but it'd
post it,
have
yeah.
to be at an accessible location that would be
Okay,
open
yeah.
to the public.
Got it.
So that's something just to be mindful of.
Okay.
Any other questions or thoughts at the moment?
I just,
David?
I just wanted to encourage, so a lot of it is information gathering, like interviewing people, so that would not, obviously, that wouldn't be a public meeting, you could go interview the, the housing agent to get background information and all. But I would encourage to have these open houses as public as possible, and to use those as an opportunity to bring people in who aren't going to be willing to come to a planning board meeting and stay there until midnight or something. So the more of that sort of activity that you can do, I think the better.
I'm sorry, this is completely unrelated, but Karen Flynn, she's a new staff person or just someone I haven't met?
Yes.
Or maybe I did meet her?
Yes.
No.
She's fairly new in our department. She's the land use assistant, so she's not here tonight. She doesn't generally come to the meetings, but she will help with a lot of the postings and administrative work. So if you have a meeting posting or help, she often is helping me collect information, the data, and helping prepare these packets for you tonight. So if you need to contact myself, you can always copy Karen Flynn to make sure I don't miss anything, especially as we get going on some draft documents or anything that we'd want to have printed for meetings. And so Karen, if you were, I hope all of you were able to open the packet link that I sent on Friday.
Yes.
So Karen will help me with that, getting the material on the website. So think of, when you email me, think of copying Karen Flynn on those emails.
So she's more your assistant than a land use and licensing specialist, is that correct?
Yes.
From what you're describing?
Because
Because I was just thinking a land use specialist would be helpful.
Okay, she assists with the planning board and then also licensing for all of our restaurants and entertainment licensing that the board of selectmen does. So she has that split role.
I mean, my suggestion would be is and this isn't something that's going to happen immediately, but as you're reaching out to people, that Abby is always CC'd on anything, so that she at least knows what's going on, in addition to the possibility that she might be able to facilitate that as well. So in a sense, the process has been designed so that we're not coming together a large number of times. I think 4 times throughout the course of the year, which is in a way is a lot, but to try to accomplish what we're doing is not that often. So consequently, a lot of this is going to have to be coordinated in a different way. And Abby's going to be really the one that's in the middle of it, that understands where each of the groups are at any point in time, or if she sees somebody may be able to coordinate with another group, as you were talking about, Trevor, she could probably put that together. She'll be the one that sees that first, if this all goes right. Now, the alternative is we could meet more often, but I think going into this, we're assuming that probably isn't what we want to do. Particularly, and then to make up for that, Abby has put together that public participation plan, because I think, as David was mentioning, a really important part of these planning processes is that the public, the community, the residents, the business people have an opportunity to see what's going on and to contribute to it. And so the public participation plan, in a lot of ways, takes care of a lot of meetings, because there's a lot of ways of coming into this process rather than having to show up at a meeting.
So you said the businesses, so will we be reaching out, some of the business owners don't live in town? I mean, I know Rick Roach does and other business owners do, but there's other businesses in town who, like the developer, or whoever runs University Station, are they going to be invited? Is someone going to actively reach out to ask?
Is there still a business
people
development group?
That has been
No.
dissolved, as far as I know.
Oh, that's a good question.
It was on that.
That's a good question.
So, and the other thought I have is, it sounds like you're expecting us to be all within town, and I feel like calling Needham, calling someone in Medfield, calling someone, it wouldn't be a bad idea necessarily, and that's something that none of us would want to run afoul of, whatever, public hearing, whatever. But if we're not supposed to do that, if we're supposed to just talk to people who live or work or both in this town and stay within.
It will be mostly the residents. We might have, we have some, the staff, we have some business contacts. We've worked with a lot of the businesses over the years with the through the planning board, economic development office, and our licensing. So we do have contacts for a lot of the businesses specifically. So I think that would probably mostly come to play with the economic development section.
Which no longer exists, but I was on that committee for many
But we
years.
do have
There's
Of the
economic
plan.
development
section.
element.
Element,
And so we
Element,
have,
yeah.
we have a
So
representative
you're doing
who will be taking that on.
Yeah, so Peter, and that'll probably mostly be Peter and Phil looking on that.
Abby,
And,
I'm-
but
Perfect.
we can help coordinate, and I can get you more contacts than we have in there. We also have access to property owner information, so we could always do like a notification about what we're doing, and we have ways to reach out to them to gain their input.
Does the town know all the business owners? I mean, a list of them?
I know Joyce Moss was working on that years ago. I don't know if it ever got finalized.
We have a kind of a working
Okay.
list of a document.
Okay, well, that'd be a good start.
It's, always being updated, but I think we have a good contacts.
Great.
Following up on Barbara's comments, for the community facilities, now some of these contacts, are boards and commissions, and I get that it would be better to see them in an open public meeting where they have a regularly scheduled meeting, but for the fire chief, so I'm not sure how to go. If Phil and I go there together, is that a public meeting? We'd look for your guidance on that.
No, you can meet with the staff. You can meet with staff outside of a public meeting. So that was kind of, so I have these contacts, and I know in your section, Tom and Phil's, there's a lot of staff contacts, fire chief, police chief, library director. So you can, that's what we're thinking of calling stakeholder interviews, so you can meet with them, and that's not a meeting. The public meeting laws, the open meeting laws, those apply to boards and committees, which are usually the volunteer boards. They typically meet usually in the evenings. Some might, I think like sewer commission, commission on disability meet during the day, but most will be at night. So those are the ones you would want to make sure you contact the staff person, myself or the specific staff, like the library director could get you scheduled for a board of library trustees on that agenda. But meeting with staff does not fall under the open meeting law, so you can just contact them and make an appointment.
We are not limited to this list of people. Like, I would think for resiliency and sustainability, we should also be in touch with the DPW and
Yes, you
police
should.
chief.
Yes, I just forgot to put that on there. Yes, so we
Okay.
can update this. I was working on this contact resource list today, but yes, it's definitely, you can expand on it, contact more groups, other groups, stakeholders, anyone you think that should be contacted. You can, you're the subject area experts on this.
So Abby, the 2000 plan is great, and I have read it, and it's very useful, but as came up earlier, we are often compared to other towns. I'm wondering if you have other comprehensive plans that you could share with us that might be.
Sure.
There's a whole list of towns that are nothing like ours that we have to plan for, I'm sorry to say, that we're on the Framingham, Bellingham, East Hampton.
Yeah, so really our
Concord has
comparables.
some relevance to Westwood, but none of the other towns on the list, not to be critical, but I agree that it would be useful. Like, what about Wellesley, Medfield,
Oh, yes.
Needham?
Yes, we can do that. The list I had uploaded today in your electronic packet,
Yes,
if you had a
yes.
chance to look. Those were surveys that we had found. Some of them we looked at in 2012, 2013, and then I was kind of just looking at recent surveys. So that's why some of them, they're random, because it was survey other towns that were in this process kind of now or within the last year. But yes, I can definitely, every town has a master plan, so
Yeah.
I can compile samples to get you all of similar.
That'd be great.
towns.
People have suggestions on what a comparable town is that they
Well,
would like.
and I want to raise a point too, because I think it's really, it sort of answers that question. I think one of the things, I was expecting us to reach out frankly to each one of the people here that's on the different committee. You know, we're working on the town centers, but I want to know, you know, more broadly what, you know, what other people are interested. I would just want to make sure that everybody here is talking to everybody they're talking to about what are you interested in, what do you think is important, and start to refer folks. And, you know, we might try to find a way to set up, you know, I don't know, you know, an evening, you know, every week through the month of March, or what, you know, whatever it wants to be, so that we could, you know, or this idea of having a single session where we have tables, you know, stations or something like that.
Okay.
And it also goes to the point raised, you know, what for town centers in particular, you know, what are towns that really seem like they work?
Mm.
And maybe even for the dispersed town centers, such as we have here, but it still works. And, you know, what can we get from a...
better?
Yeah,
Could
exactly.
it be better in 10 years?
Yeah, I think
Exactly,
that's fair.
exactly. Whether it's in a survey or a comp plan itself, or other, you know, there may be another plan.
I'd also suggest, as we look at what other towns have done, there must be people in the field who say, these are the best plan, you know, just, I don't know, just some random plan, but if there's a consensus that these are the best plans out there, maybe we could get them too and suggest this might be where we start versus a random plan that who knows.
Exactly.
Mhm. Okay, that's doable. Peter?
Are we allowed to address things that we would like the schools to do? Is that part of?
Yes, yeah, I mean, we have, especially in the facility section, that's a lot on the schools. But yes, this is town-wide master plan. It's supposed to be a, you know, policy document for the whole town. And we do want input from everyone, and this, ultimately, the plan will go to town meeting for endorsement, so we want everyone to weigh in.
I say, in my experience, in community master plans, schools are a big part of what goes on in a suburban community, and they have their own processes and they have their own ways of making decisions. And they did participate in the last time around. I think we all know there is a lot of effort now going on looking at school configuration and that kind of thing, and that's a process separate from this that will go on for probably a number of years yet. Just be acknowledged that there is a large-scale process that'll go on as those decisions are made as well. So, but certainly the schools are part of the facilities of the community.
I wonder, I just hearing what Peter has mentioned too, and I know this frequently came up with the planning board, is sort of, if we could get a sense from each of the other boards or committees in town of like, kind of like what are they up to in a way? Like, for instance, the school group, we know that there's the school reconfiguration plan. That actually came as a surprise to the planning board a few years ago that was even happening, and so someone raised their hand in the meeting and said, hey, what do you guys think about the school consolidation? And we all looked at each other like, huh? kind of thing. So I think it just maybe a little, if it's a list, if it's just a, you know, the pedestrian bike safety committee is talking about these big ideas in the next year or two, if there are things of that nature, just so we're aware that we're not working in a vacuum without having all of us going out to the meetings and all this kind of stuff could be useful.
Well, you gave us an opportunity to sign up to get notes from all the different town committee meetings, right? Is that one way that we could get that information, Trevor?
Yes,
I mean,
the
we all
electronic
have day jobs,
notifications.
and we're not taking on another full-time job here, right?
Right.
We're not, but we can look at the notes. Are there good notes for each meeting? Because I haven't looked at any in years, actually.
Each board and committee has meeting minutes. So
Would that give us what Trevor's looking for? Like,
It would not for Concom.
No.
I think a discussion
Information overkill, but.
is gonna, I mean, unless you wanna really sort of, you know, go through the weeds in order to, you know, go through 23 meeting minutes, it's probably more efficient that in the, I mean, that's why we would be talking to these folks, to understand what's on their plate, how it's gonna have an impact, you know, what of these areas would one thing I would say is that, you know, it would be interesting to see how it would seem, so, you know, when one of these groups meets with someone, I would bet that 75% of the time, the discussion will lead to things that are in another group's silo. In other words, it's gonna have an impact on sustainability, or it's gonna have an impact on economic development, or it's gonna have an impact on housing, or it's gonna have an impact, even though it's, you know, about town centers, or it's about something else. So, I don't know what the best way would be for us to do those handoffs, or if there's somebody who's listed as a resource for 2 or 3 of these subgroups that maybe we should have, and it would take, you know, less time for them maybe with Public Works if we did economic development and facilities and transportation all with Todd, rather than having them have to sit down.
Explain the same thing 3 times.
And maybe
Just
have
smart.
maybe answer the same question.
I mean,
That might facilitate.
because their time is, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
And that'd be a great way for us all to be better engaged with what we're all otherwise doing. Right?
Yeah, it would give us all a little bit
A
of
little more overlap. Yeah, we're not sitting in a room together every week in this kind of format.
Okay, we'll think about that, see how that could be quarterback.
I think if we did a chart of all the different groups that you might want to meet with in all of our groups, and then put X's in and say, we'd have one night,
idea, Tom.
and the one group would now, 3 groups would talk to them at the same time, save everybody's time, and that kind of chart could be developed, and then, you know, save a lot of people a lot of time, and these boards aren't going to be hearing from all of us at different times. And it might allow the groups themselves, by talking together, to even expand on their own thoughts.
Right, so a lot of my idea was a lot of the information you'd get from the staff contact. So for example, talking to the housing agent and, you know, the town planner on what the different boards are doing. Like the housing agent is working with the housing partnership on updating housing production plan, which is a plan for affordable housing. So those are the kind of things you'll get from the staff. I'd recommend, you know, when I was thinking about this, of having you go to their meetings also, because it's hard to get other board and committees to come to other meetings. But that was kind of the idea of having you come to planning board meetings in the spring when you're ready. That would be publicized, and that would be on the agenda, and we'd have to tailor it so it would be a section at a time. So it should be clear, you know, the planning board and steering committee are going to be talking about housing and town centers and, you know, economic development in one night. So we try to coordinate interests that might relate to each other, have those in the public meetings, and then you can invite others, and then we'd also invite those specific boards and committees to attend those too. So the idea was trying to have you go to them, and then having them come together at planning board meetings, because not all boards and committees have access to the aren't televised. So coming to the planning board is a good way to make sure we can reach out to other people. We also have the capacity to have these electronic materials on the website and in these packets that will be available to everyone before the meeting for people to comment on. So we'd probably look to having a lot of these kind of work sessions at the planning board meetings in the spring.
Let me just go through my suggestion quick. I just looked at the things I'm looking at. I would like to meet with the Environmental Action Committee, the Bicycle Safety Committee, the Land Trust, Conservation Committee, Recreation Committee. I'd kind of like, and if I could have, if you could show me a list, and I'm sure there's 30 groups in Westwood, all of us would like to meet with at some time on one side, and then our groups, and to say, there might be 3 other groups here that like to meet with the conservation, and so maybe we could have one meeting with the conservation people for 3 of our groups. Just to make it, eliminate a couple of 100 meetings where they're just saying all of us at different times going, you know, it just, if you could give us a list of all of the groups that you have listed here, and have us X off which ones we'd like to meet with, it might allow us all to,
Yeah, it's almost like a big matrix.
yeah, a matrix, so
Got the committees down.
on this day,
the side.
this is where we go, and so everybody isn't gonna go nuts meeting with 20 different
Well,
groups.
we'll go nuts.
Okay.
I don't know if you wanna do that, but it's a suggestion to save a lot of time for
Yeah.
us and the people we're talking to.
Yeah, there'll be clearly some moving pieces here.
And we
some
all could
logistics,
learn
yeah.
from meeting with one group together about our own groups and
Yep.
how we could
Yep.
benefit.
Yep, no, I like it, it's a good suggestion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Abby, where did you want to go here? Had you talked about the public participation sufficiently?
Let's see. So I have this public participation plan, kind of the outline that we've talked about. I've started a webpage for you. It needs some updating. We are also in the process of getting a new website, so I'll be working on that with the IT director and getting more information as it becomes available on there and trying to make it more prominent. So as we move forward, people can follow that along easily. And then we'd also encourage everyone that Barbara mentioned, signing up to receive email notifications of all board and commission meetings. And then we also have a Westwood Wire subscription. That's a general one that goes out monthly to anyone who signs up for it. And then there's also one in that where it could be specific to the comprehensive plan. So that might be a little more frequent as we have some of these open houses and meetings with the planning board. So if you sign up for that, you might get more than the monthly emails.
So this is something that committee members have to do?
Well, I recommend you all, and then also spread the word to anyone else you talk to that says they're interested in being involved.
Oh,
That-
gotcha.
That way they can know what you're doing and what other boards or committees are doing, so they know how to provide feedback and input. We also, the planning board also has just started recently a Facebook page. So we wanted to use that to help get the word out about the comprehensive plan. So if you're on Facebook, like the planning board, and then you follow all the events.
And presumably they would make events for meetings that we could share on Facebook to get people to come.
Should we do that?
I think
so
that'd be,
far, making the actual meeting events?
if you make it an event on Facebook
Yeah.
that people could just share, I
Oh,
feel like
okay.
that would be,
Okay. Okay, yeah, so when we have events like
Useful.
the vision session, I can create an
Yeah.
event for it, okay.
I'm
Right.
not on Facebook, and I don't plan to get on Facebook.
It's okay,
That's not gonna be a problem.
Yeah,
We need to have some other means to check it out.
Yeah.
Give me some people.
yeah, but it exists, so we'll use it.
Yeah.
But we can do other things too.
Yeah, it's publicized.
All right, in terms of, to get through everything, next steps, I think you've all got a copy of the 2000 plan, which is our starting point. So obviously, it'd be worth your while to review at least the section of that plan that you're responsible for. Abby, there was done for 2010 or 2012 a red line of that, where somebody had marked what had been done and not done. Do we have that?
Yes, I think we do we?
There are individual sections were done.
Were they?
Yeah, so for instance, there's a section was done on transportation by the pedestrian bicycle committee.
And I think we have one on National Cultural
And
Resources.
not calculated,
as well.
we've met a number of
Yeah, but not
times. and
across
come
the
up with
board.
one.
Was never completed.
Okay,
Town centers
So
was never
we have to get them
Okay.
and get them out to everybody.
Right,
Okay.
so that's something I'll be working on, trying to get you within the next month.
So zoning matters to a lot of what, at least these guys are doing too, right? So are we, this is a zoning map here?
Yes, I just put that in.
Okay.
I will get, you'll have access to more maps, especially with the open space and recreation plan. We had some new maps recently, but I just kind of threw that in if I just had that
No, that's
available.
good. Because some things that we might suggest might require a zoning change, which is kind of a big deal. Right? So
okay.
maybe we don't want to suggest that, or I don't know.
Can I just say one other thing in regards
Yes, John.
to the past plan, which looks great because it's concise, not a verbose, document.
Yep.
I love that.
Yep.
You make it far easier, but it means we have to boil down you know, a lot of things potentially. So the expectation is we're gonna try and be as concise with the update
Yes.
as this is. May need some more description in some areas, but.
Yep.
okay, stick to
Going
that.
into it, that's what we're suggesting. If it turns out that people don't want to do that, we can talk about that. But I don't think this would be doable if this were a 200-page plan.
Yeah,
So,
I was a little
yeah.
worried.
Yeah,
And
and it takes some real talent to make it, as I think you
Yeah.
were alluding to. It
Yes.
takes some talent to make it that concise, so.
So if you can't do it, just do what you can and then give it to other people and we'll try to see
Yeah,
if we
try
can get
and-
it more
Hear it.
concise.
Yeah, no, I think it's great to be working from something that is concise, and if there's something that it feels like it's missing, or there's a missing emphasis,
Exactly.
easy enough to add that, and if you need to expand on it, we will.
Exactly.
And, you know, and decide then, can we continue to keep it boiled down?
Yep, well said. That's exactly right. So what I'm doing here is a sort of short-term next task. Now, we're not terribly ambitious at this point because we are going to the holiday season, so there isn't going to be a lot of meetings that are going to be occurring in the next month and a half or so. But the things that will be being done is that you're taking a look at your section of the comprehensive plan, probably having some conversations with your partner on your topic area. We will be, as Abby mentioned, we'll be preparing a survey to the community. And we wanted to take a moment here, but more importantly, in the days following the meeting, for you to think about what questions that you would want to include in that survey. And we'll take a moment to talk a little bit about that now. But there are, did you make those surveys available?
Yes, in the electronic packet.
Yeah, so in the electronic packet, we pulled together, as Abby mentioned, a somewhat of a random collection of surveys that other communities have done as they've gone into the comprehensive planning process. So you can look at that to get a sense of what other people have asked. There was a survey done in 2012 that you could take a look at as well that we asked Westwood residents about. Or you could just think of your topic and say, I think we would really need to ask people this, and just make up the question yourself. You don't have to worry about the language of the question, the wording of the question per se. That'll all get sorted out later. But if you had a notion of what that question should be asking for, even if you put that in writing, that would be helpful. I haven't looked at all those other surveys to see how they did it, but the one that we did in 2012 was a question. There were 13 questions. We needed to make it relatively short so people would actually answer it. But each of the questions had a choice of 4 to probably 10 possible answers. And the reason to do that is it makes it a little easier to take the survey, but also it's easier to compile the results, because if everybody's giving you their own words back, then you're making some interpretation of what they were talking about. So they were selecting from a menu of possible answers that we had developed, knowing the topic as well as we had. Also, there was always the slot where you could fill in. If you didn't see the response that you wanted to make, you could always fill that in as well. So that's how it worked. I would imagine that we would think about that again, that we make this as easy for people to respond to as possible, and try to keep it to a 20-minute response time period, something like that, in order to maximize the number of responses that we get. But throwing that out to everybody. Anybody have any thoughts of what would work for a survey? I don't know as you have to suggest any questions at the moment, but if something's on the top of your head, we'd be happy to take it right now.
I do think it's good to give that little space that allows them to answer a question that doesn't fit into the menu. And then to make sure that we collect those comments, because those will be very important.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know if anyone did make comments? Because
Oh, yeah.
they did? Okay, so, okay.
I think
I
one
know I
area,
did, actually. We're doing this. Yeah.
one area I think you could ask for is, what do you see as the needs in a particular area? You know, to even break that down into, for youths, high school, adults, and seniors. You know, what are your suggestions about in some of these areas? And I'd also like to ask, what do you think we do well, you know, for those 3 categories of age? You know, what do you like about Westwood's resources and such as that? I think that would be helpful to just, not as a particular answer, but you know, people may be thinking about these things, or get them thinking, and
Sure.
offer some nice ideas.
Sure. Yep. think we had something like, last time, what do you like about Westwood? What does Westwood do well? What don't you like about it? Kind of thing. So there's all kinds of different possibilities.
In my own, in recreation, just ask that.
Yep.
You can make it. What do you like about our open spaces? Or what do we need to add, but ask those questions unique to some of the different areas that we're dealing with.
Yep. We should probably, go
How
ahead,
were the
Jennifer.
surveys distributed the last time?
Both electronically and on paper.
And what was their success rate in comparison to the two?
Well, it wasn't a sample, so it was, I think, the
We-
question is how many responded? How many
Right, yeah.
people responded?
We have in your packet the 2012 survey. There are 13 questions. It says there was 165 total responses, 163 electronic, and only 2 paper. So I think ideally we'd like to have an electronic survey that we widely distribute, but then generally when we've had surveys, even recently, we still provide paper copies at like the libraries, town hall, the senior center, and
Can I ask, Abby,
municipal
do we
buildings.
ever promote, would we, maybe there's a reason not to, promote this process through the school system? Do we ever, I don't think I got anything through the school about this committee, and everybody reads
Oh, okay, yes.
what the school sends.
Yes, I think they have an email notification, so
Yeah.
we look to them we'll ask them if they would provide stuff like that, the survey and the vision session.
Right.
When even, I know like I know a lot of the principals do like, a weekly letter to all the kids, and
Yeah.
if you ask each of the principals in each school just to include, even if it's just FYI, the comprehensive plan committee is up and running, stay tuned
Yeah.
for more, whatever it is. I think that's a great suggestion to leverage that as an outlet. Because you're right, people do actually look at that stuff
Yeah.
versus other things.
Steve, did you have a
And
question?
when we did the open space, the Islington survey, we got a lot more replies, right?
Yeah.
I think basically we're getting better at doing these surveys and getting more people.
If I could just add, the open space was actually the best survey we've had. We had 809 responses to that survey. We did it online, it was posted on the website, it was advertised in the local paper, it was advertised in the district bulletin. And then after we also announced it at fall town meeting last year. After we held the survey for a month, we closed the survey, had a visioning session, and then reopened the survey.
Good idea.
And directly targeted high school students as well. We had, the principal agreed to send it out to all of the students in the school, and we got maybe 100 responses from high school students as well, so.
Yeah.
And that was recent, right, Nora? You
That
talked
was
about.
last February.
Okay. So the two things we forgot to mention was that the open space and recreation plan is in its final form, which might sound redundant to what the natural resources section of this plan is, but they'll be made compatible and consistent. And then there's a housing production plan process that's underway now, and there was a open session for that last week, and there was a survey done for that. So those survey results are available as well. So there's a lot of going on. That the key for our group is to be able to pull that material together, and if not to reflect it in its entirety, at least not to be inconsistent with it, to draw from it. Peter?
How do we get input from young people, particularly around climate change, sustainability, resiliency? I would think young people are going to have a totally different perspective than those of us that are older. I'd really like to hear what kids have to say in town. What would they like us to be doing about climate change?
And is there some group or like a club or
Environmental club, isn't there in the high school?
in the schools that we can go through and
No, but.
I don't know.
no one seems to know.
I
But
think
there
it's a
must
great
be.
idea. We'll just have to figure out how we can do it.
Yeah, I mean, it may just be as simple as reaching into the, the high school, the science department, and asking it through there, and that might be the most distinct sort of channel to get the most, I don't know, on topic, sort of response. But I think all kids, frankly, are have a particularly different view.
Since they're going to be living with it longer.
Longer, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Any other thoughts on that?
I guess
maybe
Yes.
two thoughts. One is, I think we need to make sure that the survey reflects the community. So if we have to be careful if we spike the parents who have children in school, we're gonna get answers of that category, but maybe we miss the senior citizens.
Yep.
So we ought to make sure we can categorize to make sure we have a representative sample that reflects, you know, the different groups or ages or populations in the town.
Yeah.
So that'd be one, so I think we should be a little careful. Great to go after groups, but we
Mhm.
better make sure we can categorize the results
Mhm.
by knowing
Mhm.
that these are parents of children, these
Mhm.
are senior citizens.
Mhm.
The other thing is, the one thing I was curious about on economic development side is, you know, everything's a balance. So there's other groups here that are open space. Well, economic development, we can fill those in with big buildings and they can lower our taxes. So one of the questions I was curious about is, what is that balance? I think I know, you know, but it would be nice to have a question on, do we want lower taxes and more economic development? Or do you want to keep where things are and focus on open space and, you know, more sidewalks and so on? What is that balance? So I would hope to see a question on
Okay.
that.
Well, you'll be part of the group that
Yeah.
figures out what that's going to look like, so, okay, yep.
So that, you know, I think that's a good comment, but it raises a question in my mind, and it's come up with several other comments that people have made. You know, how much are we an advocacy group for our own views, and how much are we trying to reflect the community and pointing out, you know, the highlights? We're not gonna be rewriting the zoning laws. We're not gonna be telling the zoning board what to do. We might say, you know, as part of this plan, zoning needs to be reviewed, but how far down do we drill to get to those points? Because I get a little uncomfortable when I think the town has hired all these people to do this work. We're not writing their goals and objectives for them. We're listening to them and reflecting.
Right.
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 So it's like you said, it's a balance. But,
It is, and it's a great question, because it is the question. I think that if you look at the current plan, you'll see how that was done. There was, at the time, in 2000, the residential development versus open space preservation was kind of one of the key issues, and you can see how the plan handled that, trying to acknowledge that residential development was going to continue to happen, but maybe it could happen in a way that doesn't impact the character, the natural resources, or whatever. And we came up with some strategies to do that. So you try to find your way through. In other words, hone in on what is the problem, you know, behind it. It wasn't that people really resisted residential development per se. We all live in a house, but it was that it was beginning to overwhelm, in some people's mind at least, the character of the community and so forth, and it was having an impact on natural resources. So we tried to deal with that question. So it was what was underlying what seemed to be the issue was being expressed. We looked to try to find out really what was the problem that people were having.
And I think when we have the visiting session, you really hear it. I think everyone should attend. And I know in the original visiting session that we had back leading up to the 2000 plan, well, I was on the planning board and on the steering committee, and I was told to keep my mouth shut, not say a word, and just listen. And I did, and I was very happy with what I heard, but you really got a lot from in what the whole town was thinking.
Clearly, I think an answer to your question is that we're trying to reflect what the community feels. We're brought together because we have some experience in having been part of some piece of it at some point in time.
The open spaces and recreation plan, which was just adopted and is moving on, has some very, very valuable information, that would benefit at least 4 groups here. So just, I think if you could, maybe you've done it, is to send out copies to those 4 committees, but I think there's a lot of other committees that might just see the tremendous amount of research that's been already done about Westwood, and it's unbelievable, all the information in the introductory part, about 50 pages of very valuable, and
It's good
I think almost all committees might benefit, but 4 in particular could be a part of their work.
Any other thoughts, comments? there'll be something going out to you that hopefully will spur you to come back with something further on that. Data collection, we've talked about. Planning townwide vision session, we kind of talked about that as well. That's all I had on the agenda that I had. Did you have anything further? Oh, yeah. The visioning session, which is that multiple hour, say a 3-hour session, where the whole town is invited to come to it. It was done the last time, and typically done on a Saturday, a weekend day, to enable as many people to go as possible. Do people have any reaction to that or thoughts about that, or what a good time to do it? Again, we need to do it more towards the front of the process than the back, because that's where some of the information is coming from. So you were thinking February?
I was thinking with this time frame, since we need to hire a professional to do that, so it'll probably be closer to February time frame. So we don't know the exact date yet. So we'd work with the consultant, and then we'd have to look at what's going on in town and try to arrange a date that doesn't, conflict with something that we know of. We might never have that perfect date, but we'll try to look.
So don't do it the weekend of the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
That's on Sunday.
Saturday?
I thought Saturdays worked well,
I
just.
did too.
Feels like the right. And then that time of year, I think it's people are kind of captive by the weather, et cetera. So
Okay.
it seems to make
Okay,
sense.
so that's good. That's good, Rand.
Just, I think there's school vacation,
Yeah, just.
so just
avoid
not
those
the
guys.
start and end of that, which is a little limited.
Right. So I would generally with the town, we don't have many meetings during school vacation week, so a Saturday we don't, but when I schedule meetings, I would try to not conflict with any other like board or committee events that I would know about, so we try to look for that. And then we would, we probably know at least a month in advance, so then we'd want to start, well, as early as possible, start promoting it. So all of you telling everyone you know and getting the word out, because we want this to be very well attended, so as many people. So we'd look to have it, I don't know, where did we have it last time?
It was in the middle school.
In the middle school. So in one of the school's cafeteria, and it was at the middle school the last time. I think it was at like 9 to noon or 10 to noon or something last time.
And this would be Westwood residents versus people who own businesses in Westwood. You have to be a resident to participate.
No, a business person could come. In fact, they did. They did
Okay.
the last time, yeah.
Okay.
In fact, they were specifically invited.
Okay.
I mean, as many as we knew. And not a large number showed up, but some
Yeah.
did.
So would there be we're getting the workshop going, or the visioning workshop, we'll call it. That's great for some information, collecting information. And then will there be a period of time where someone could then reflect on what was proposed? That's sort of like ongoing, right? In
Yes.
terms of, so that people could then say, they just are interested in having an opportunity to have more input.
Yeah. Mhm.
So that's going to sort of
Yep.
be kind of built into it in some ways?
Yep. There'll be some sort of summary of what happened at that visioning session in terms of the things that were talked about. There's various. We haven't hired somebody to do this yet, but there are various ways of capturing what people say, and whether you do weighted voting or something like that. There's usually some process that takes place at those, and then some ideas will be picked up. Other ideas might not be, but it'll only be because it doesn't fit into something that we're doing. But everything's fair game at that point. So people should feel free to come and say what they'd like to say. It's wide open. They're breakout groups, so give more time for people, individuals,
just thinking
to say
for people
things.
who couldn't make it, or whatever.
Oh, no, there's
that would
plenty
be
of
fine.
that as well. So then there's the survey, and there'll be these other sessions that they can come to. And it seems to me if somebody called Abby and said they had something to say about it, then she could put them in touch with the person who's working on that section and get it that way as well.
Right.
The idea is not to try to miss somebody. The idea
Yeah,
is to
yeah,
try
I
to
know,
get
I
everybody
know.
to do it. Any other thoughts, any concerns or any fatal flaws that anybody sees with this process? I mean, it probably sounds a little amorphous at the moment, but it'll begin to come together as we start doing the work that we're doing. And we'll provide as much guidance as we can as it goes along.
I just had one question, and maybe it's been figured out, but I guess, so this last plan was written by an outside professional, basically, so it sort of has one voice and one tone in a way.
Mhm.
I assume, is there a thought about how we might control that? We're all throwing all this stuff at it, it's gonna all sound a little like written by committee kind of thing. I don't know if someone from staff is gonna be the final editor who's gonna kind of like, okay, like,
Yeah.
calm it down, or whatever it is, in terms of its voice, so. It's just a concern, we don't need to answer. You don't need to answer tonight, Abby, it's fine.
Okay. Committee members, you'll be all working on the first drafts, but then myself and planning staff would probably be the next reviewer, so staff would review it, and then we'd also look to the specialists in the area, the staff, and then also the committee as a whole, and then also the planning board. So I think it'll ultimately come together. It will read as one document, and that'll be the goal.
And Trevor, in fairness, Phil Hare was particularly good at distilling a lot of material into a very few words.
Is he still alive?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Yes, but I
he's
think
retired.
Right. Any other questions, thoughts before we adjourn?
So when does this survey, when do these questions have to be compiled? That's kind of the next.
So I was thinking it would be, a goal would be to have them early December, have the survey completed so we could start distributing it. The whole month of December would be ideal, before the holidays, and then up until the vision session, so throughout most of January. So if you have any questions you want to send me in the next week or so,
I'll say by the end of a week from Friday.
yes, that would be great. I think I just kind of threw out.
You did throw out November 28th.
November 28th was a suggested date, but if you have any soon after that, just send it to me, because I'll start compiling them and I'm pulling everything together.
Well, then maybe that's not something we need to reinvent the wheel. Maybe we can just tweak
Yeah.
the 2012.
Yeah.
Or if you see a couple of good questions on there, you say, I really think
Some
that
that
it's still
seem
appropriate.
perfectly great, that I like those.
Oh, yeah,
Some that
absolutely.
seem they're no longer on point.
And to Peter's point, maybe we would add asking the age range of people.
And maybe if they're a resident
So
or
we can
visitor.
gauge.
I always ask the age.
It did, yeah.
And-
It did?
It did.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
see
right at
that.
the end.
Yeah. Less than
And
5,
we
how
should
long have
also
you
have-
lived in Westwood?
I don't remember. Yeah, I think we assumed.
What is your
it
age?
was-
Okay,
I
perfect.
assume.
I didn't go all the way to the end. Okay, yes, it does.
But we'll
Those
talk
are
about that
important.
as,
Yeah.
as it comes together. You're going to see the survey and get to react to it. So if we do some identification information like age or resident or whatever, however we choose to do that, if you think we could use another characteristic, we could add that.
Well,
as
things
well.
like, do you have children in the school? Are you retired? Things like that.
We don't want to violate people's privacy or
Right.
get too invasive. And then just Charlie's point about how several of our small groups might be interested in talking to
Mhm.
several of the committees. So there's something going to be done about coordinating
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, that was a good idea.
Where, okay.
You put like age group, like you go someplace and say you were in this age group, 18 to 24. You know, I think that's the better way to do it than put your age.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Oh, yeah,
It's a range.
Yeah, it is range.
It's multiple choice, oh, yeah.
Okay.
Less numbers protection, better.
Yeah.
And before the survey goes live, I'll send it out to the full committee for you to send me feedback, comments on it. Also, if you've noticed on the emails that I've sent, it's always a blind copy. That's so that you don't hit reply all to, because open meeting laws, you don't want to talk outside of a public meeting. So email counts. So you can communicate with staff, so you can respond to me, but not to each of you as a full group outside of a meeting. So that's why it's a blind copy. So if you have comments to the survey after this or on the draft, you can just let me know.
Are we set to have another date to meet as a whole group at this point, or are we gonna wait?
We'll wait, I think.
I think we'll probably wait until we have a vision.
Consultant.
A consultant to do the visioning session. So then you might want to.
I think that would be a very good time to, we'll have some things done and then we'll have something to talk about with the consultant, what that might look like.
So
Good suggestion.
I'll probably be sending you some emails over the next couple of weeks.
Yes.
But we'll hold off on scheduling the meeting.
But you just got
I think so.
Well, I just printed one.
Anything else?
That's 10.
Okay, if not, thank you very much again for your participation tonight and for the coming 12 months or so. The town much appreciates your willingness to do this. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Good?
I think we're good.
So,
Yeah.
the one thing we might just spend.